So yeah, we can get going.
All right.
Cool. You're listening to the Blockchain Socialist podcast. And for today's guest, I have Caleb James Delisle. He is the founder of PKT and Cjdns, and he's working to demonopolize internet access with mesh networking, decentralized bandwidth markets, and blockchain micropayments. So hey, Caleb, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Sure. Maybe to start off, it would be great if you can give a quick introduction to yourself and some of the work that you've been doing, especially and how you got into blockchain, because you started off, from what I understand, not in the blockchain space and doing something else and trying to you had very formidable goals that you wanted to accomplish with the projects that you first started off. So I think it would be great for people to hear what you were working on before and how that led you to PKT.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my development story goes back to about 2010-ish, 2011. That or you can even go further back, but that's about when I started to actually develop CJDNS as a technology. And this came around about the same time as Namecoin. The CJDNS project and Namecoin were a bit in the same space, so I got a lot of exposure to blockchain really early on. Wasn't really interested in it at the time. What I was interested in was, at that time, basically solving some of the problems which made it so that an ISP router basically could only be operated by one ISP. You could not subdivide routing equipment on the internet, and because you can't subdivide it, it makes it so that the ISPs that own those routers, it ends up kind of gravitating toward this monopolization where, there's only two ISPs here because they own that infrastructure and nobody else can really get into that infrastructure. So I was looking at a lot of these ideas way back. I was thinking about, imagine, and I grew up with slow internet too. So I was thinking, imagine if I could just make an internet connection to my neighbor and they could make an internet connection to their neighbor, and so on and so forth. Why do we have to wait for DSL to come to my town, which was, the hills, and there was no internet whatsoever, just dial up. So anyway, I started this CJDNS project around 2011, 2012. It kind of developed a little community following because it built this capability to route traffic through a network where you may not trust some of the nodes, so some of the routers themselves. And it's common to not always trust all of the computers in the network, but when you're not trusting some of the routers in the network, that becomes a lot more complicated because they could say, oh, I'm responsible for Google, for example, and then all the Google traffic flows right to them, and then that network falls apart. So
And CJDNS, just for people who may not know, it's was it meant to sort of begin creating almost like local mesh networks so people don't have to rely on their ISPs to or whatever was available as an ISP in their local area, which
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to reinvent the internet. That was the lofty goal from the beginning, and I feel like that goal has moved through even till now. It's just that at that time we were getting the protocols down. So 2011, 2012, 2013, we're really nailing down a lot of the protocols of how we could imagine that you could connect to your neighbor without necessarily trusting them. Then that's a huge thing. And then the next step was, okay, once, and there was a big pause here. And, from 2014 to 2017, I was out of that space, and I was building another project called CryptPad, which you'll see it around the decentralization and the technology space. It allows you to type like Google Docs, except that the server doesn't know what you're typing, and it's a AGPL open source. So CJDNS, that was a GPL project, CryptPad AGPL. Building a lot of these types of technologies to try to advance the state of the art. And what got me out of CryptPad and back into the mesh networking space was basically when Lightning Network reached a certain level of maturity. And so, to fill you guys in, Lightning Network is it's a means by which you can do a bunch of kind of weird transactions, and with those transactions you're able to kind of agree to transfer money really quickly and really cheaply on top of a blockchain.
Specifically on the Bitcoin network, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's adapted to Bitcoin. It could be made to work on like Ethereum. It can be made to work on
No.
anything except for the privacy coins like Monero. But yeah, it's really well adapted. The Bitcoin people have been pushing it forward. And when that was reaching the level of maturity that I was feeling like, okay, we can do this, then I started thinking, okay, now we can take what we developed back in 2012, 2013 and actually build a functioning uh, a functioning industrialized version of the thing and actually get internet to people.
Yeah, and then I guess from there, PKT came about.
Right. So yeah, PKT was this next evolution, and we did a couple things there. So we tried to be really boring in terms of the financial technology, because the concept is we wanted to make sure all the bugs would happen on the routing technology, which is easy to fix. And the financial technology, if there's bugs there, it's really hard to fix. But we did do a couple of things. One of them was we changed the proof of work to a new proof of work algorithm that's called Packet Crypt, and that's something else that I've invented. And it is bandwidth hard, which means that you use internet bandwidth in order to collaboratively mine with other miners in the network. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that we created this institution called a network steward, and this is a way that we're able to fund research and development and just evolution of the project and the mesh networking space, with 20% of all the new every block as it's made goes to the network steward. So you can think of it like a founder's fee or a pre-mine, but as opposed to going to this one entity and just piling up, we established as a very strict rule that it goes to competitive research grants, competitive grant making in that ecosystem.
Yeah. So I guess the network steward is really just like, if I understand correctly, it's sort of an on-chain governance mechanism for funding the project itself, and I assume like maybe spin-off projects from it or something like that.
Yeah, so it's a little bit complicated. There are things that we cannot fund because that is, for example, marketing. It's just there's no go for anything in the space of marketing, and the reason is because there's too many things that too many ugly things in that direction. But when we're talking about research and development and building out of new things in the packet space and anything that's adjacent, we really want to cast a wide net going forward. So, if we're talking about somebody who wants to build a Wi-Fi chip, that kind of thing, open source Wi-Fi chip, that's the type of thing that we would potentially fund. The rule, the one of the key rules of it is that nobody can benefit unequally from that funding, because otherwise it would create a corruption. So we are really looking to make sure that the projects are not profitable in some way, and that the project is creating this result that is open source and going out to the entire ecosystem, and I mean the entire world actually. So it's very close to what you would consider to be a charity as far as its functionality goes.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. So if we're looking at it from like maybe a bird's eye view, what are we looking at? I guess Cjdns is maybe something that people can use to the very basics of starting their mesh network. Packet Crypt, I know, is basically what's being used within PKT as the consensus mechanism. Taking from that.
Packet Crypt is just a proof of work. All it is, it just creates something to do to prove that you've made effort in order to get those coins that you're getting and in order to keep the chain working correctly.
But I guess it's leveraged within PKT in order to like fund these microtransactions so people can they can purchase basically almost like a local ISP or something like that.
Yeah. So the way that we're building the decentralized bandwidth marketplace is a lot more complicated than what a lot of projects like AltheaNet do. Now, I want to give a shout out to AltheaNet because that is a project that's done great things, and they've gotten people on the internet. We're not even there yet, but we're taking a bit the slow road because our technological stack is that complex. And what we're doing here is we're building a bandwidth marketplace so when you're putting an antenna on your roof, you're connecting to your neighbor, and instead of just charging your neighbor like X number of micro pennies worth of something for the bandwidth and trying to price that algorithmically, what we do is we take that bandwidth lease and then we sell that bandwidth lease into a marketplace and let a bunch of marketplace trader people figure out what the price of that is, and then they take it and sell it back to what we call a cloud ISP. And you can think of a cloud ISP as kind of like an Uber, but it's not like one Uber because there's a bunch of them all competing for the same drivers. And the bandwidth lease is kind of like the time of that driver. So you're leasing that driver's time and then taking that time and turning it around to pick up a rider and take them somewhere. And that's kind of how the cloud ISP, the bandwidth lease, and the marketplace all work together. Now, we didn't want to have just one company like an Uber type thing because, that would be a monopoly, and that's what we're trying to get away from in the internet space.
So it's like basically as a user, if I want to get to internet, I can spend some PKT in order to pay my neighbors a bit for their bandwidth that maybe they have because they have special equipment to access the internet.
The vision is that as a user, you should be able to download an app and get on the internet for absolutely free. The only thing that you should need to pay for is a guarantee of bandwidth at times of congestion. And that's also a fundamental, that's one of our political positions on this project, is that when there is extra bandwidth, it should be free.
Okay. Yeah. That is, I don't know how much you know about like energy markets, but sometimes energy markets also function that way. I mean, depending, of course, on how it's designed and what the particular market conditions are. But sometimes you can get paid for using energy because there's just been too much energy being produced. So I guess that's kind of the way you guys are maybe approaching it.
Yeah, I mean, bandwidth is not something you don't need to get rid of it. You can just not use it. But it was a fundamental, really sticking point of the project that, I mean, granted, Packet Crypt is going to create this artificial demand for bandwidth, and that is also for a purpose. But the
purpose, maybe just to make that clear, the purpose is so that you don't have to pay, some sort of monopoly telecom company out your ass to be able to go on the internet.
So the purpose of Packet Crypt. So let's get into Packet Crypt a little bit, because I mean, we're talking about proof of work. A lot of people have different opinions about proof of work. Now, I mean, the number one thing that everybody needs to understand about proof of work is that it is very difficult to build a secure blockchain without proof of work. I don't feel comfortable saying that it is possible. I know also the Ethereum people don't feel comfortable saying that they're not comfortable saying, okay, we can just switch to proof of stake. A lot of projects are doing things that are not proof of work at this point. I don't feel comfortable with their security model. Just like from my security background, from what I've done, Cjdns, CryptPad, if I do a security analysis on a proof of work coin, I can basically evaluate it and have a good level of confidence in it. When I'm doing a security analysis on a proof of stake coin, it's really up in the air. So, that's the first thing. And then this is the thing that I think people need to understand about why projects continue to do proof of work, even though there are other projects going around saying, we're a green blockchain, you don't need to do that. Now, with regard to Packet Crypt itself, I wanted to recapture as much of the value of that effort that's being done as possible, because there can be some debate about the environmental impact, but what there is no debate is that there is wasted resources here. Some people are putting something up that could be put to good use, and they're throwing it away. And so I wanted to recapture as much as possible. Now, again, with proof of work, anytime that the work task itself can be changed, can be altered by a human being, that creates a security vulnerability, because one of the miners can alter that task such that that they already know the answer, and then they'll supply the answer, and then they'll get the coin, but they already knew the answer when they changed the task. So this is like a hard problem with proof of work, where this is why a lot of the sort of folding coins and that type of stuff have some major security issues. That is why we're not seeing them in the more mainstream projects like maybe Monero or Ethereum or even Bitcoin. But I don't think Bitcoin's ever really going to change their proof of work, because they're very focused on the deal you signed up for. Now, with Packet Crypt, we do two things. We exchange lots of data between all the miners, and the other thing that we do is we do a lot of encryption. And the encryption is designed so that it mimics the same behavior as encrypting a packet. And the reason to do that is because that way, anybody who designs a high performance Packet Crypt miner is actually also going to be designing a high performance packet encryption device for, say, VPN, for Cjdns. So we took the same encryption operations that are being used in Cjdns right down to the aspect of different packet sizes, everything all the way to the end, and we placed that into Packet Crypt so that whoever builds a fast miner needs to be able to do exactly the same task as encrypting VPN traffic. So that's the one aspect. And then the other aspect is, of course, this artificial demand for bandwidth, which intuitively, if you have an internet connection and you're paying $50 a month for it, but then you're able to get that back or even more back as from mining with Packet Crypt, then you're able to upgrade that internet connection. And some of the ISPs maybe are saying, okay, we're not allowing this because it uses too much bandwidth. And there's a whole other aspect about that, because they oversell that bandwidth. But if you're needing to upgrade to a business line that's unlimited, well, that's actually a benefit too, because then you can start sharing that internet with your neighbors and your neighbors' neighbors, and then that entire community can potentially turn off their cable and just switch to using the packet network.
So, in compared to Bitcoin, like the type of proof of work is very obviously it's like energy intensive. It's about calculating for a particular hash. But in this example, it sounds to me a little like in the Bitcoin example, you see like this competition for faster graphics cards and like this specialized equipment, which can be very wasteful over a certain amount of time as they upgrade. Like they double in efficiency every couple of years or so. And they need a lot of it's this one unidirectional sort of competition. When it comes to this type of proof of work consensus mechanism, do you foresee like any type of similar unidirectional competition that would lead to just sort of no cap, like a non-cap to energy usage or something like that?
I think that the only difference in the end, so you can't really change the proof of work. So contrary to what a lot of projects with green proof of work have to say, I mean, I have to side with the Bitcoin people here. You can't change the proof of work to something that's less energy intensive because maybe it's all about storage. Oh, okay. Then the same amount of actual effort is going to be put into acquiring those disk
Storage,
drives.
which is what happened with Chia, I think.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, and Chia was branding itself as a green cryptocurrency, I think, in the early moments.
Yeah,
And I mean, the problem is, you can't really do that. So, I mean,
it's hard.
that said, I actually think Chia is a great project, and I'm very much a fan of Brent Cohen. He built BitTorrent. Uh, Incredible engineer, and I think that what will come out of Chia is going to be eventually much cheaper disk storage because the it's creating this artificial demand for storage, and yeah, it's going to drive up the price right now, and everybody's going to complain about that. But 3-4 years down the road, we're going to be starting to see like 10 terabyte SSDs and 20 terabyte SSDs, and nobody's really going to notice when that happens because it's there, but all that R&D got paid for by Chia. And it's kind of the same thing. Like I don't know if you have like a 7 nanometer processor on your computer. I have this Mac with this 5 nanometer thinger. um, Basically, the equipment that made the 7 nanometer process was paid for by Bitcoin miners because those are the people who care enough about making chips at the next level down process, and that they would actually pay significantly for just a slightly more powerful chip to save just a slight bit of electricity. So I mean, basically, the fab got paid for by Bitcoin miners, and we're all using the chips from that fab. And I mean, nobody thanks them for that. People just talk about how wasteful it is because that's what makes headlines. So I have a very, very unique opinion of it, obviously, and I see the Bitcoin people, and they're not representing themselves very well, and I see the people talking about against it, and I feel like their arguments are not very, very coherent. So,
Mhm.
it's just
But I guess with the example of like using bandwidth, would it's similar how Chia had made like basically a competition for disk drives. The competition under like a PKT mesh network system, would it then be for bandwidth, like for connect, like would people be making more efficient machines for being able to transfer more data across the internet faster?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we're gonna see that. I mean, already we've got people figuring out, okay, we need to bring 100 gigabit into this computer. How do we do it?
Yeah.
And where we're going next is we're going to see people bringing a fiber into different areas, into different communities because they want to mine. And then when what the thing about Packet Crypt is you bring a fiber into a community to mine, and then maybe that mining becomes less profitable in the future when whatever the economics change. That fiber that you bought is still a fiber. Whereas you buy a Bitcoin mining rig, and that mining rig goes out of style, and I mean the thing's basically a paperweight, unless you have
Yeah.
like free power. Um,
Yeah.
but you bring a fiber in, and that fiber is still a fiber, and that's one of the like big thoughts in the design of Packet Crypt. Now, we are going to upset a lot of telecoms and monopoly telcos because they are doing what is, in my opinion, a very dirty trick, which is that they oversell. They take one internet connection and they resell it to 10 people. It's like a gym that is selling subscriptions, but they're just hoping people don't all show up at the gym at the same day because they don't have the equipment. And that's kind of what the major ISPs are doing. And we're already starting to see some of the hate tweets about Packet because people are, they're going to use up all the bandwidth, and yeah, I mean we are, because they're selling the same thing over and over again. You can't do that. You got to actually have the infrastructure, and finally, somebody's coming along to create some pressure to make that infrastructure. And if they're not willing to make it, then we'll build it.
Yeah. But I guess the difference here is that with Packet, you really have to build good infrastructure as compared to, like, in the case of Bitcoin or Chia, these are like consumer products that you can, like, you just churn them out. But here, like, when you build a fiber line, you're building, like, access to pretty good internet, potentially for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the in the design of Packet Crypt. I mean, you can also talk about the censorship resistance that's in the design of Packet Crypt. There's a lot of things that are in that design, like the fact that when you need to send all this traffic to these other miners, then you can slip some actual messages into that traffic, and it's really hard to because if you're blocking Packet Crypt traffic, then the Packet Crypt miners are going to find a way around that, because there's an economic incentive to find a way around it. And so if you're it's going to create this cat and mouse game, a market for censorship evasion when people are censoring Packet Crypt. So unlike, for example, Tor, I2P, which are great protocols for hiding in the shadows, this is a protocol that challenges censorship right face to face.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this episode so far, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend, and join the Crypto Leftists communities on Discord or Reddit, which you can find links to in the show notes. If you're enjoying the interview or find the content I make important, you can pitch into my efforts starting at $3 a month on patreon.com/theblockchainsocialist to help me out and join the newest patrons like Patrick, Zachary, and Tom. Any amount really helps, since making this stuff isn't free in terms of money or time. And as a patron, you'll get a shout out on an episode like I just did, and access to Patreon exclusive contents like Q&A episodes where you can submit and vote on questions you'd like me to answer, and I'll give my thoughts in roughly 20 minutes. There's a poll out right now for patrons to choose the topic of the next Patreon episode, which you can vote on if you become a patron. Of course, I'll still be making free content like this interview to help spread the message that blockchain does not need to be used to further entrench capitalist exploitation if we put our efforts into it. So if that message resonates with you, I hope you'll consider helping out. So thanks again for listening, and let's get back to the interview with Caleb. Yeah, let's say, what if I throw like this, like a disaster scenario, or like a potential scenario, I'll say that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like, is it possible that, the rich guy in the community has a fiber connection to his house, IT savvy guy, makes a lot of money already, and he goes on Packets and he sells his bandwidth to his local community. Could he essentially become like the community's ISP and potentially like use that leverage somehow? I don't know, maybe
right.
block local news to like something, I don't know, but like,
Yep, I get you.
That.
That's built into CJDNS. All data is encrypted. And
so
why
do you
is all
have to
data
use
encrypted?
CJDNS?
Yeah, that's what we'll be building it on. We'll be evolving the CJDNS protocol because it uses source routing, and source routing is in this case the answer to the problem of subdivision of the network network equipment. We need to be able to subdivide that so that when he has that big antenna and he's bringing internet into that community, he's not just bringing it in and then selling the internet like a classical ISP. He's offering that bandwidth to all of the cloud ISPs that are in who knows where, probably California, and they're all these startups. They're competing for the customers who are in that community, and a customer uses whichever one they want, and they may use the same person's tower to connect, but that connection is being routed and controlled by the company of their choice. And that aspect of having the company of your choice, even though you're getting it from that one person, is how we evade the aspect of that one person then taking control over that internet in that local community. Also, how we prevent the monopolization by decoupling the infrastructure from the service, we can prevent the monopolization.
So you're keeping, so basically, rich guy in like some podunk town is providing internet for people in, metropolitan cities. It's like, there's not a direct, such a direct connection between this guy and giving internet to his community as like internet lord or something.
He's providing, what would you call it? Like, he's providing this raw resource, and he's not even providing it to the people in the community directly. He's not engaging in business with that community. He's providing that resource to these cloud ISPs who are who knows where, and they're internet service providers who kind of like a VPN provider. They don't own any infrastructure, but they do the interaction with the customer. He provides that raw resource to them, which they then leverage in order to offer that internet service to the people in that community. So it's basically everything is going through a VPN all the time. You can think of it that way.
So then, like, there will be, I guess, at least a few different businesses that are doing this. They're like connecting. They're the ones connecting the users with the providers of bandwidth. So like they're sort of. I mean, could that is that the position of like the trader a bit?
Yeah. So these companies that don't own any infrastructure, they're just like the VPN companies. You type VPN and you get like 30 offers on a list on when you search it, and you don't know which one to choose. It's kind of like that. So it's very hard for them to be abusive of their customers because there's so many choices, and you choose the one that works best for you. And you don't even need to involve yourself with Packet or cryptocurrency when you're just buying from one of these companies. You can pay in whatever way works for you, and that's also by design. You pay them, and the only place where Packet is involved is in the way that they pay the person who's actually running the antenna on their roof. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So then, as a user, do you need any infrastructure beyond your own router, I guess?
I mean, as an end user, it'll be an app on the phone or an app on the desktop. That's really all you're going to need. Or yeah, you could have a router as well.
Yeah, like I imagine you'll need Wi-Fi connection, but that Wi-Fi connection needs to be provided by
one of the infrastructure providers that's local to you, and then you're going to have the app, and it's going to control your Wi-Fi on your phone and make it do weird things that automatically connects to all these different Wi-Fis and automatically handles getting you to your cloud ISP, and so that then you can get onto that VPN.
So what do you think about, like, because I've heard some lucky cities have been able to basically provide their own internet to their citizens. They just get rid of the telecom companies, say we'll do it ourselves, and they provide internet for much cheaper than like big tech telecom companies would. Is this something, I kind of see this almost as like a grassroots movement, more of being able to do that in your town rather than having to like get lucky and your mayor like spearheads some sort of effort.
So my opinion of these state or city municipal internet service offerings is it's complicated, right? Because I've been living in Europe for some years now, and the European part of me, it says, oh, that's a brilliant idea, that's how everything should work, just like the water, just like the roads. But the American part of me is saying,
freedom.
We can't allow the state to have control over something as critical as the means by which the people communicate. Because the way we communicate is the way we basically decide who the state's going to be. And so it makes an end run on democracy when the state can potentially limit the way we communicate. So anyway, I mean, that's a European American kind of difference of culture.
Is it the same as the state? If it's like with a municipality, I guess maybe like the localist in me wants to think that generally most municipalities are not strong enough to have like
Right.
an incentive to really want to censor the internet or to be able to do such things. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
But where are they going to get their internet from, right? I mean, they're going to get it from a data center. They're going to
Yeah,
get it from somewhere, and it's probably going to be unencrypted. Plain text. Internet. It's going to be coming from somewhere, and in the end, the state's going to have very good control over that internet traffic. So, I mean, I think it's something to be concerned about, and in every aspect of the Cjdns and the Packet ecosystem, we built in these controls where we've believed that it's fundamental that when I know free speech is a big a big debate, but we believe that when Alice wants to talk to Bob and Bob wants to talk to Alice, that communication's sacred. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody gets to stand on a soapbox and be annoying all the time, but it does mean that two people should be able to have a communication between themselves, and that's the vision of end-to-end encryption. And that's what I've been doing for like 10 years, so I'm pretty committed to that one at this point.
yeah,
Anyway, I mean, you could say that the problem's solved by just putting it under the state. I think that it is the Americans are probably too extremist about this, saying that it's inevitably going to blow up. But I think that it is more fragile, and it's something that one needs to pay attention to this.
yeah. Do you think that there are any like other implications beyond, because like is there any implication for how platforms on top of the internet would be built if you're using PKT or using like this type of ISP infrastructure? Do you think there's any implications there? I guess I only ask this because I don't know, sometimes I get like a bit frustrated how sort of the left is so open to using very like big tech centralized platforms for communicating and organizing. And maybe that's just a habit of, not being a tech person studying social sciences. So you don't really know, you don't want to get into all these technical details. You just want something to work, but you're sacrificing something whenever you're going for like this type of convenience.
Yeah. I mean, as I've said before, I wish the populist left and the populist right would compare notes from time to time, because they both get certain things right, and they both have certain, let's say, blind spots.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't really solve the problem. So Packet does not solve the problem of big tech organizations alone.
Yeah.
It's not something that we were trying to directly solve, and the reason's because this is really complicated. What happens is you have you make a search engine and you have 1,000 search engines, and then one of them turns out to be really good, and everybody jumps on board the one that's really good, and then that one becomes really big, and then it becomes a de facto monopoly, even though there is like 10% of these other search engines that people use. And that pattern seems to repeat itself in the internet, but these are not monopolies in the traditional sense that they can force people to use them. It's just that everybody gravitates to them because of network effect. And it's a problem. It's just that it's a problem that I'm not sure how to solve without reducing people's agency. If somebody wants to use, Google, who am I to tell them that no, you can't use Google? You have to use the local thing because I told you that I'm ruling over you and telling you cannot use the thing that you want to use. And so it's a very difficult problem.
Yeah. There's sort of like a part of me that wishes that, why can't we just have one search engine is okay, but can we just call it search engine? Like, can we just like non-branded, no company is just like a public utility? Like, Can we all just have like all of our movies, all the movies in one place, and on an app on your phone or your computer called Movies? You don't have to go through Netflix. You don't have to go through like these like for-profit centralized companies.
No, Apple seems to like to do that.
That's
You
true.
open up
They
like they have
pretend.
these apps called like movies.
Or I mean, they put an I in front of everything, and
Right,
then
right, yeah.
and then whatever it is. No, yeah. I would hope that, I don't know, as peer-to-peer technologies in general just become more prevalent and more popular of an option, and it functions at least at the same level as what's already provided, then we begin like through that process we can begin to rethink our relationship with these platforms.
Yeah, I mean that's my hope. That's what I'm hoping because there's a essay called oh no, ecology of something and strong drink. I don't remember the exact title of the essay, but basically the argument is that when they prohibited alcohol in the United States, after that it led to people it broke through all of the what do you call it, cultural behavior patterns that were built up around reasonable usage of alcohol. And so when they removed the prohibition, people didn't know how to drink responsibly. And so
Mm.
there was this like kind of chaotic adoption of alcohol, which is not present as much in Europe, where it was legal all through that period. And they compared it also to when you spray a pesticide or an herbicide on a piece of land, and then what comes up again, what grows is first the weeds. You don't have an even ecosystem from the beginning. You don't have a healthy ecosystem. You have just all weeds after you have decimated everything. And I think that the internet is just so new that it's all been sterile. I mean, if you think about it, like 30 years ago or 20 years ago, it was, we had our 5 channels, or 3 channels, depending on where you lived. And, you just watched 90s ads and sitcoms, and it was awful. And,
And we thought we
that,
were having fun.
oh, I knew I wasn't. I knew it was garbage. I was just sitting through it. But, you know, that's a like a sterile environment, and now we're exiting that sterile environment and returning to this world where people communicate with one another. But in a lot of cases, I think we don't know how to communicate anymore, or we don't yet know how to communicate with the new tools that we have. And so we have people getting into these crazy groups, and the Twitter stuff, and all of this, and we just need time to adopt some of these tools that we have, and for this to settle down and grow an ecosystem, basically. And that's why I'm excited about the fediverse as a technology.
No, yeah, we originally met through Mastodon,
Yep.
which is I think is a really interesting platform that I think people should definitely check out. I'm a part of the social.coop instance, so I just pay like, I think it's like £1 a month, and they use that money and they use it to support cooperatives.
Yeah, I just joined the oldest, or the original whatever Mastodon instance by the developer of Mastodon when it was new, and then I ignored it for a few years, and then I got back into it because it is pretty interesting. I mean, the big value there is that you have incredible moderator to user ratios, which you just can't have on something like. I don't even want to name them. It's terrible.
The bird app.
The birds. Oh yeah, and the face thing. It's all awful. Um, and and you can have these relationships with your moderators that you could never have there, and you have these relationships between the instances. I still think that there's a significant need for improved moderation, and I think the whole extremism thing can just fly out of control, as you see if you kind of go to the dark side of the Fediverse. But I do think that this is where the future does lie.
Yeah, yeah. One of the interesting features about it, I think, is like not having the numbers
Mm-mm.
in
Yep.
Mastodon. Like in Twitter, there is like people may not want to admit it, but like when you see like the number of likes or the number of retweets, it's sort of like it grabs you a little bit, you know, and it's designed that way to keep your attention. So you like check back the app to see how'd your tweet do, you know, you just the thing. But with
Yeah.
Mastodon, I don't get that as strongly, and it's more like a collaborative communication, I guess. When I talk to people, I've never been in like a I don't know, just like an insane fight. Some people have, sure, but it's not as vicious as Twitter. Sorry, the
Mm.
bird app.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't have a lot of interactions on Twitter. I don't have a lot of negative interactions on Mastodon. Just hit the mute button. It's person's in their headspace. You're in yours. It's okay. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
and I think people learn that and adopt those more practices.
Mm, yeah.
Anyway, um, so what got you into? One of the reasons why I was so interested in your podcast and it was that what you're doing is you're talking about um, you have blockchain and socialist, and most of the people that I interact with either are seeing money as entirely a positive thing or they see money as entirely a negative thing. So you've got a lot of the people in the blockchain space, and they're just like rich, 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 make money, make money. Making money is good. It's all good. Anything involving more money is always better. And then you have a lot of the people, especially like on the Mastodon, there's more of the socialist type people, and they're just sort of rejecting the concept of money entirely. And so you have this really unique blend, and that's what attracted me, because I mean, for me it's very clear that you don't adopt either of those extreme positions. So tell me a little bit about especially what is money for you, and what do you see in blockchain technology?
Mm, yeah. I think that's. I mean, for me, I think money can be at least a few different things. There's like quite a few different theories around money and what makes money money. I think one of the unfortunate sort of one of the unfortunate things that I think Marx missed a little bit in some of his writing was on money. Not that he was like horribly wrong and horribly incorrect or anything. I think he has a lot of really when it comes to all the different types of value that he goes into in Das Kapital. I think is really interesting, and there's a lot of to take away from that. But he uses sort of the liberal sort of version of the theory of money as like money as like a commodity. Money. He sort of refers to money as like the ultimate commodity that is exchangeable for all other types of commodities. And I think to a certain extent, in certain cases, that is true. But I think there are other types of frameworks that you can look at money. I think you can see money as like a type of promise. There was, of course, David Graeber's book Debts, in which he talks about money as debt and credits, which I think maybe explains money a little bit more. And yeah, I think one of the because he talks about socialism as like this transition to communism being a stateless, classless, moneyless society. And I think when he was talking about moneyless, he was talking about like his own theory around money, which is largely sort of this commodity theory of money and being like ultimate exchange for other commodities. And capitalism is like a mode of production in which like the commodity exchange is pretty dominant. So in that case, like I get why he says that and why he believes that. I don't think that if we're going to move beyond capitalism into a post-capitalism, which I hope is going to look more like a socialism and is not going to be like a reversion into feudalism or something like that, but that there needs to be some type of like signifiers and like signals for particular actions to occur, like to avert resources into a particular direction. And so I think that's sort of one of the problems that socialists, I think, haven't very clearly defined in certain cases, and which is why it's pretty difficult because we're sort of constricted by this commodity theory of money, which is not, it's not the only theory of money. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that money sort of manifests itself. And that's what's ironic, is that that's the same type of view of money as a lot of like crypto people, is that especially in Bitcoin, they compare Bitcoin to gold, as digital gold. And so you're calling it a digital commodity. It's, and it's, yeah, to them, if you're a gold bug, then you think that's, having some sort of value that's backing your money as like a particularly good feature. So you can, there's like this need for, like this ultimate truth that you can always latch on to. But I think in reality, money, if you think about money not as a commodity and as like a promise or as a debt or as like as like something else, something a bit more social, then it gets a lot more complicated, and it's a lot more nuance in it. And I think for crypto, and especially a lot of Bitcoin people, that's very frustrating to them, because they look at the fiat money system which is really, the state is able to print as much money as it wants and how it wants to. Of course, it's not like an ideal situation, but I don't think reverting to a pure commodity-backed money is necessarily going to bring about the type of positive changes that you want.
I mean, I think that there's something to be said in favor of hard money. I mean, Packet is hard money because we copied the Bitcoin code base. We didn't want to have the bugs in the finance, and the thing I think is in favor of hard money is the idea that you just keep people away from these things, because people are inevitably going to make some bad decision at some point or another that you really wish wasn't made that way at that time. But at that time, it seemed like the right decision. Like in 2008, when the bankers sort of pressured the government to print a lot of money in the United States and kind of hand it to them and let them off on some of their problems, and those problems ended up trickling down to the rest of the economy and hurting a lot of people. So, I mean, I think that the to speak in favor of the Bitcoin people, it's clearly you could make a good argument that this is something that should be beyond the reach of human hands.
I get the sentiment. I definitely get the sentiment. I think the issue, though, is that I think it's much less about how hard your money is and more to do with how democratic your money is. Because really, we have zero input into our monetary policy in the U.S. by design.
Right.
And if you restrict yourself to solely thinking about like I don't know, that someone needs to control money rather than like the democratization of money, then I can see why maybe you would think that hard money would be a particularly useful or like more beneficial system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing where I think the Bitcoin people are wrong is, I mean, I think that they're thinking, or at least some of them are thinking, that there's real money and all other money is fake, and I don't think that that's a tenable argument. I think that money is what we agree money is, and we agree because it's that we agree on that framework because that framework benefits all of us. It's just like law, it's just like language, it's just like protocols. But what framework is the best one? And I mean, the concept of just blockchains is that we're just going to let everybody decide what framework they want, and they can exchange the coins for the other coins. And yeah, there will be some bubbles and some busts, and we'll let people do what they want to do. A very liberal attitude, in the best way. The concept of letting people do what they wish is something that has worked very well for keeping people alive in the past 200 years, and many other ideas didn't work so well for keeping people alive. So
I mean, I think it's more, I think the blockchain is sort of it's being brought up in a world which is very neoliberal, which is very free market based, and we're seeing the issues with the free market Uh, but sort of the difference is that, with a lot of Bitcoin people who tend to be right wing libertarians, to them it's more about like bringing more of the markets, and for us on the other side, we're saying that no, markets are sort of causing these problems to a certain extent, the way that markets under capitalism sort of create these issues. But what I would really love is to introduce to these people like just new monetary systems, like under like just introduce mutual credits. Like now, under a mutual credit system, uh, the government doesn't print the money. You print the money. We all print the money. We all democratically decide how we all want to print money to each other. And I think that would be a really interesting experiment, because I think mutual credit is, it removes the sort of alienation that is given through like commodity exchange, through money exchange in, today at least.
I mean, I imagine in an ideal world that I might have a phone and I keep my spending money on my phone, and some of it would be some piece of equity in the butcher shop that's down the road, and some of it would be some equity in the pizza place around the corner, and some of it would be some equity in the coffee shop that's, and maybe the houses around the way. Because these are things that I think are cool and I like them and I believe in them and I would like to own some of them, and maybe I would own some solar panels somewhere as well, and I would just kind of pick out all the things that I want to have something of, and and just enter all that, and that's my money. And when I want to spend it, I just sell a little piece of it into a marketplace. I think that we have the technological capability to do that. It's just we kind of need to maybe get more experience with the concept of doing it. I'm not sure. I mean, one thing I think that is important is to start differentiating between what we want and how we want to get there, because I think that you and I would very much agree on what we want. I consider myself as a sort of an anarchist in terms of what I want, because I want to feel like I live in a world where nobody's ruling over me, and I want to feel like I live in a world where nobody's ruling over anybody. And I think that you probably feel relatively similar. And but then how do we get there? I'm okay that there be lots of rules and regulations and whatever it takes in order to get us to that world where I don't feel like anybody's ruling over me. And I'm living in a country with lots and lots and lots of laws and police and military and all these things. And I don't want to give them too much credit, because they are very hard on a lot of people. But they create this ecosystem where, for maybe the majority of people, never have an interaction with the police. So, and granted, I know it's not perfect, and a lot of people do have negative interactions, but this creation of more rules takes people in the direction of feeling like there's less being ruled over than you might have in like a what is the one of these war zone countries where technically there aren't any rules, but you're very much ruled over by the local warlord or whatever it may be.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Somalia is like the perfect example of a libertarian
Right.
utopia. Yeah,
Well, if libertarianism is about the means and not ends, but
yeah,
for me, I want libertarian ends. I don't want
sure,
libertarian
yeah,
means. I want to feel libertarian. I want to feel liberated. I don't want to.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't care how I get there.
Yeah, maybe since we're about at the hour, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the any future plans or vision, like any upcoming milestones for PKT for people to look out for.
Yeah, well, we're developing a lot of the technology. So, I mean, we did launch with not as much of the technology, because it is, it's a true to life kind of blockchain. no VC funding, no token, no pre-mine, none of these types of things. So, things happen as it goes. We started and then we developed the finality of the technology. So, a lot of stuff with Lightning Network, Cjdns, the VPN marketplace. These are the types of things that are ongoing. Interacting it with other blockchains, being able to wrap it into Ethereum so that you can use Packet with other currencies. These are the types of things that are ongoing. I mean, you can go to PKT.cash and there's a roadmap there, and you can join us on PKT.chat, and we have a place where you can just chat with the community.
Maybe just to finish off, maybe you can just share with people where they can keep up with you and all your projects like PKT.
Yeah, so I mean, mostly the way we coordinate is on pkt.chat, which is a self-hosted kind of Slack-like thing, and
Nice.
it's open source. So I invite everybody to come and hang out and talk about ideas and projects. It's a place where we should be able to, again, like in the concept of libertarian and feeling liberated and socialist and feeling social, where we can all just kind of come together and have good ideas together, and and then try to get some of those things implemented and build some of that technology. Obviously, we have this super ambitious roadmap. You'll find it on pkt.cash, and but we're all here sort of writing the roadmap together as participants in the project. This is not like a token with a centralized issuer and then like an ICO or any kind of venture capital. This is something that we're all sort of doing together. So we learn as we go, and we try. What I think is the right way is just my proposal, and this is something that we're developing together every day.
Nice, cool. People should definitely check it out. It's a really interesting project. And yeah, we'll stay in touch. Curious to see what happens into the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.